we all make stupid mistakes with our sewing over the year, don't we? So I have spent some time compiling the best or the worst of my sewing mistakes in 2025. So this is my version, or the sewing version, of It'll Be Alright on the Night, and it'll be alright in the sewing room, or it won't, obviously. So let's roll back the cameras to all my shenanigans in 2025, and then I'll bob back at the end with my 10-point plan of how to avoid these stupid mistakes in 2026. Fur and satin bias binding was a disaster in the making. Well, not a disaster because I've done it, but my goodness, it was not easy to sew at all. The fur, as I was sewing, shifted on itself. Sewed it to the outside, right sides together, and then normally I'm a bit clever with my binding. When I turn it over, I stitch in the ditch on the front and catch the back in. But there was absolutely no chance of that happening with this. I just didn't have the confidence to do it. And I didn't want to do it wrong. So I have spent a lot of time, I don't know if you can see the hand stitching, but I spent a lot of time hand stitching all the way around the inside of the bias binding. I decided that I would try the dress version. Now, the difference between the top and the dress is quite different. Now, the dress and the top are on two separate bodice blocks, which should have set alarm bells off with me, but it didn't. Top, front and back pieces were virtually the same. It was just the V that was deeper. Silly me assumed that the dress was the same. And guess what? It's not. The big difference being that the front of the dress has some gathers in it and the back doesn't. But I merrily went on and cut two fronts out for the dress. Sewed it all together. Here it is. I made it in some pink check gingham as well. So there's a few issues with this dress. As a top, I think I would wear that, but I will put it on at the end and you can see that as a dress, I look like I'm a 5-year-old getting ready for school. And I just can't get that image out of my head. It's my school uniform dress. But it wasn't right anyway. Did all the pleats absolutely beautifully, really pleased with them. And then when I came to try and fit the top to the bottom, the back top was bigger than the bottom, and it was meant to fit. And it still didn't click with me. Don't know what planet I was on. So then I thought, oh, that's weird. I must have to put gathers in the back as well. So I did. I put the gathers in. I thought, oh, Pat must have forgot to tell me because I know better, don't I? Put the gathers in, sewed it all up. And it is sewed up, look. Only the hem to do. Thought, hang on a minute, there's meant to be elastic in the waist of this. This isn't sounding right. I thought, before I do that, I'll try it on. And when I tried it on, yes, the V's were higher because that's what I wanted to achieve. But because I'd used the front for the back and it had the gathers in, oh, there was just too much fabric everywhere in the top. It was fabric flipping overload. The back was gaping, it was sticking out. I thought, and that's when the light dawned. Went back to the pattern, got the pattern pieces out. The back doesn't have any gathers in, does it? It's smaller than the front on the dress. So yes, and the skirt is like a circle skirt. I just honestly, you'll see, I look like a toddler. Well, not a toddler, obviously. I look like a little girl. I just need some little white ankle socks and black patent leather shoes and a little school bag. And I'd love the part. The first thing that I did wrong was quite really silly for me, because I bang on about using interfacing on all my makes. Now with the fringe dress, because of the shape of the neckline and the fact that I was using a floaty viscose fabric for it, they do suggest, it's only a suggestion, that as well as interfacing the facing piece, you put narrow strips of interfacing on the actual bodice. Why did I not do that? I don't know. I really don't know, but I didn't. So yeah, that caused me my first headache, because when I sewed the facing to the neckline, and then you have to sew it, top stitch it round. When I was doing that, even with best press, the fabric was shifting. So I've ended up with a few spaced places down this side particularly where it's gone a little bit wavy and wiggly, and I know it's going to annoy the hell out of me, but it's done. What can I do other than take it all apart? And I don't want to unpick this quite floaty viscose fabric anymore because it was a nightmare to unpick as well. So first tip, put the interfacing on the bodice if you're doing the shaped neckline, because it will keep it sturdy and stop it from shifting and stretching. Even with stay stitching, still put that interfacing on the bodice as well as the facing. So that was my first rookie mistake, really. Read the pattern, Christine, and do what it tells you to do. So the next thing that I did wrong was, and I've still not corrected it, was put the waist ties, I wanted them in the front darts. Thought I'd measured it right, looked great, but the dart is all the way up here and the waist is there and my boob is here. So you can see I've put these waist ties in too high up. So I'm going to unpick this dart when I've got my head straight. It's a bit mashed with the fringe dress at the moment. I've fallen right out with it. I'm going to unpick the darts, move that further down and re-sew the dart. I'm not taking the skirt off, I'm just going to unpick carefully in between and move those straps, ties down. And if that's all I'd done wrong, well then it would have been all right, wouldn't it? But I'd already messed about with the facing piece. So then I went on great guns. Everything was going really well. I put the sleeves in, put the cuffs on the sleeves. They went in really well, stitched in the ditch so that they caught on the inside and everything went smoothly there. And then before you attach the skirt on, you have to put the pockets in. They went in great. And then it tells you to press up your hem. And it's a very narrow hem because it's shaped, but you have to press it up twice. So I was very conscious of this. So I took my time, used my best press, pressed it up twice all the way around, all nice and neatly, and looked brilliant. So then all I had to do was sew the hem. But it was lunchtime and my tummy was grumbling, so I gave myself a well-earned break. Not the right time to have a break, Christine. Anyway, sat out in the sunshine, had my lunch, came back in. Right, get the hem sewn up, get this dress finished. And for some weird reason that I still don't understand, in my head, I thought, oh, it's been turned up once, I need to turn it up again as I go round. Why? Why did I think that? And I literally got 3/4 of the way, yes, 3/4 of the way round the hem before I realised my stupid mistake. It was already pressed up, ready to go. Oh, you can imagine how I felt. But the seam, the hem, clearly felt too bulky. It was folded over 3 times. So it was time for a brew and some more unpicking. And it wasn't the easiest to unpick because it was really floaty viscose and the thread was a really good match, which is great, except when you need to unpick it, isn't it? So it took me probably about an hour to unpick the hem, I know, but I persevered and tried really hard because I didn't want to end up with any holes in the hemline. So I had to take my time, calm down and unpick the hem. So I did that, give it a quick press again to get rid of any markings, and that got rid of all the little holes, great. And then sewed it up and it was fine. Avid watchers among you will know that I made the Aspen dress from Fabric Godmother. I'll be putting a little video up here of me twirling not so happily in it when I was down on my sewing retreat recently. It came out mahoosive. There was too much fabric in it and it buried me. To say I had a sack on was an understatement in the extreme. So I've put it in its project bag and didn't want to look at it. You know that feeling. We've all been there. So what make did I mess up on this week? I've made 2 pairs of the pearl pants from Swim Style Patterns. Granted, I've made them both as Bermuda shorts for my hauls that I went on. And the first pair were a little bit snug. The second pair I got just right. So I was confident that this pattern, I didn't need to start doing try-ons, tweaking, do anything. I could just sew it, couldn't I? No. And I'll show you why. I'll put an image of me in these trousers up here. God knows what went wrong. I have not got a clue because I've not altered the pattern. The only thing I can think is that I've done the seam allowances too big. Maybe. But the crotch on these pearl pants is just a little bit too snug and the rise is wrong, they're too low down. So I spent ages making these pants. Here they are. I did all the details. I put the belt loops on. My invisible zip at the back was super invisible. There it is. I put bias binding around the facing on the inside. Yeah. To say I'm a little bit gutted is an understatement. So what am I going to do to put the rise right and stop it taking the rise out of me? Let's turn them inside out and have a look. Try and figure this out together. So I have got not a huge seam. You can see the seams there on the rise, on the crotch. So I'm thinking these are going to have to get taken apart. Then the only other thing that I've done, and luckily I didn't trim this seam down. I must have known, eh? The seam on the waistband is there, so I've got that much of a waist. Can you see? So I've got a fair bit, probably about 1/2 inch, that I can snaffle out of the top waistband. just tack the waist facing back on and try them on, and maybe just tack the zip in. If that doesn't work, if they're still looking ridiculously, giving me a hungry bum, then the only other thing I can think to do is, and I don't want to do it, but rather than end up with these trousers that are never going to get worn, and this fabric was, it's to die for. It's so soft, it drapes really nicely, and I'm really gutted, can you tell? So plan B, if just taking that little bit out, and sometimes that might work, taking that extra from the waistband seam might be the solution. If not, and actually I might have to take the zip out, I can just put a hook and bar, because there'll be extra at the top, I could just put a hook and bar at the top, couldn't I then? To close it. I don't like hook and bars at the tops of invisible zips, particularly at the back where you can't get to them. They're a nightmare. But I might do that. No, I won't. I'll take the zip out. I can't stand that idea. So, if that still does not work, then I'm going to have to bite the bullet and do what I don't want to do with these trousers and put a waistband on them to give me some extra at the top. Now, they do fasten at the back, so that's going to maybe look a bit odd. But the tops that I'll be wearing, even if I have them tucked in, they'll only be tucked in at the front, they won't be tucked in at the back. So nobody's going to see it, are they? Only. And the lining, interestingly, is cut out the same as the body, which was a bit of a head scratcher for me. And I don't know if you can see, for some reason on the sleeves, or particularly on one side, the linings ended up a little bit longer than the outside. I'm okay with it, I'm going to live with it. But if I did it again, I would definitely cut the cape sleeves lining pieces out ever so slightly smaller, probably by about 1/2 centimetre, so not a lot. Slightly smaller than the outer, and hopefully avoid that pesky lining peeking through. So what do we think? Yes, I made some silly mistakes, didn't I? But on the whole, I rescued them. Just that little schoolgirl gingham dress that just had to go, and it was not rescued at all. So what have I learned that I want to take forward into 2026 and hopefully help you not make the same silly mistakes as me? So the first thing that I've got written down is don't do bias binding on fur fabrics. Well, that was a nightmare, as you saw. And the bias binding just shifted with the fur and twisted all over the show. So definitely one to avoid that. Number 2 was, when pattern hacking, check that the pieces actually fit together before you cut them out. Just put the pattern pieces next to each other to check that they're going to work would be a good idea. And that relates to the little schoolgirl gingham dress where I had the front and the back bodice. I just used the front for the back and it did not work because the back didn't have gathers in it. Rookie mistake there. Number 3 is think about the look of your fabric before you commit it to a garment. And this relates to the schoolgirl gingham dress again. If I'd have only looked and thought about just put the fabric up against me and stood in front of a mirror, I would have realised how ridiculous that outfit was going to look. But that's what I'll be doing in future. Whenever I'm planning an outfit, I'm going to get the fabric, stand in front of the mirror. Yes, so when I'm planning an outfit, I'm going to get the fabric, stand in front of the mirror, put it up against myself and try and visualise it first, instead of just going all gung-ho, cutting it out and then looking like a right lemon. Point number 4 is take on board pattern suggestions, and if it suggests that you use interfacing in a seam, use it. It's there for a reason, and 9 times out of 10 the pattern will work out better if you put the interfacing in. So take on board pattern suggestions. Number 5 is when you're putting waist ties on a garment, tack them in and check the placement of them. Don't just sew them in like I did with the fringe dress and end up with them right under your boobs. So tack waist ties in and check the placement first. Number 6, don't take a cheeky sunbathing break when you're in the middle of an element of your sewing. Again, this relates to the fringe dress, where I pressed the hem up, then took a break, came back to it a couple of hours later and forgot that I'd already double pressed the hem up and turned it up again. So don't stop something part way through a task. Stop in a place that's easy to come back to and hopefully not make silly mistakes. Number 7 is a really obvious one, and it's do a toile when it's a new to you pattern company, as I was with the Aspen dress from Fabric Godmother. That came out like a sack. It was huge. I'd even, I think, sized down 2 sizes on that, and it just swamped me anyway. The style of that dress just really was not for me. And if I'd have toiled it, I'd have realised that and not even made it. I'd self-embroidered, machine embroidered admittedly, but I'd machine embroidered a length of fabrics that had a beautiful pattern down on the bottom of it. Spent a lot of time on that dress and it was horrendous. Number 8 relates to the pearl pants that I made, and it's always measure your crotch and then you won't end up with a hungry bum. Even if they're pants that have been a pattern that's already been altered, always double check your crotch. Number 9 is when you're making a lining for a sleeve, as I was with the cape coat, cut the lining out slightly smaller in the length than the outer fabric, and then it won't peek through at the bottom. The pattern just said cut it exactly the same, but my lining still peeking through the bottom of my cape coat, and it's just a little niggle. So if I made that again, I would definitely cut the lining slightly, sleeve lining slightly shorter than the outer, and then it wouldn't have happened, would it? And finally, point number 10, slow down. Take my time, enjoy the sewing process. Don't go at 100 miles an hour as is my want, and just take my time. And don't sew when I'm tired. That's when we all make mistakes. So if you're tired, put it away. Get to a point where I can come back to it, put it away, and then come back to it with fresh eyes. And I won't make any mistakes, will I? So they're my 10 points. I'm going to take them on board I'm going to get them printed out, A3 size, and pinned up in my sewing space to remind me, and we'll see how I get on in 2026. I hope you've enjoyed seeing my little bleepers, and I hope I've given you some ideas of how to avoid making the same silly mistakes as me. I will see you all in 2026 for another fantastic sewing year. Bye!